Yeah, also as a quick aside, what we of course have learned from Birmingham is that you think about these things in simple terms. You want to break down things in terms of Christian ethics. So you want to explain things in terms that could be understood by a child. So when you're teaching about teaching a child in future about the history of this period, you'd say, well, the French and American postmodernists were the Hegelian version of catechumens Christians. So the war ends and everyone thinks these people are disgusting cultists. They hide in this sort of radical subjectivism to hide that they're just unreformed cultists, and then just burst out, of course, once they've taken over organisations via the bio-Leninist strategy. So it was quite clever. The thing with Platonists, of course, is they are very intelligent, because you've got lots of intelligent men who go into the amphitheatre and talk to each other. Because I think biologically, most humans, of course, throughout history have been part of the primate hierarchy, and Diogenes probably had a biological advantage. He didn't care and was happy living in his barrel with the dogs. So, of course, he was the greater thinker in many respects. But of course, he was useless in an army. So he and Alexander had no use for each other. They were both. It's not ego. It's just pragmatic. Diogenes says, "Well, I'm not going to be your soldier. I'm just going to wander out and do what I want." Alexander says, "Well, you're better off giving me information anyway. I've got lots of soldiers, so the relationship is fine." And Diogenes isn't thinking about money so much because it would corrupt him, isn't it? So your relationship with Alexander is, well, I've just told you the strategy to kill 100,000 people because I've been sitting in a barrel talking to dogs by myself for 30 years. You may think this knowledge has no value, sir, but I assure you it does. And when it works, you think, well, Alexander goes back to the guy and gives him 20 quid, says, "Oh, thanks, mate." And Diogenes is happy because he can eat for the day, that kind of stuff. But that is sort of the relationship you want with the world, because the law is so attractive to, or was attractive to my father's generation, I think, because it was, okay, well, we barge our way in and we just tell the truth. So if you're the Irish doing criminal law in England, that's quite fun. You get to go and have lots of adventures. But as England implodes, it's probably best not to tie to the old man's law firm, thankfully. But it's just that, given the breakdown of the state, it's quite embarrassing to have that thing sold off when, again, the lack of referral is a disgrace. So in the time, people have been either deliberately deciding not to assist, or have been deliberately thwarting assistance. We're now in a position where we're fully set up. You've got so many professional connections of high quality. As soon as you've got outside the city, by the way, you think about loyalty. The loyalty people had to the city to try and keep it running when it would just keep attacking us. And as soon as you physically get out, the quality of person you just habitually run into, your life just improves organically. You don't have to do anything. So it's a total disgrace as to what people like Cotton did for power. But again, you can take the Helen Pluckrose argument to the ultimate degree. Well, these people were duped and should have didn't know better. Therefore, you have to give them a golden bridge. But this can be John Cotton, can't it? This sort of random gangster in the back. There's no way to sort of treat people in Birmingham Labour any different to this. They're just crooks. They're just acquisitive criminals who put on various theatre performances while demanding central government money, so they could hive off client groups for power and money, which is just how the city operates. I can make these statements because I ran their patronage empire. I see how it's run, and my late father's law firm saw how it was run because they attacked my grandmother. We sued them back in the day for housing repairs because she was a council housing tenant who sent a kid to Oxford. So he went to Oxford, went back, sued the local authority to get her housing conditions upgraded because they were a disgrace. But nothing has changed. It's just that over 20 years or so, or 17 years or so, I should say, to be precise, they got a guy inside. So now we've got all sorts of institutional knowledge. It's not just the stuff in the decaying Lenovo laptop. It's full wide sweep overview of Birmingham Labour, because we worked for their community services department, saw a lot of their disgusting behaviour. So you had a long career with full oversight of the entire polis effectively, plus the background, family background in various aspects of law, including criminal law. So again, in terms of any kind of legal proceedings, the only reason we're running into a brick wall at the moment is because things have descended, quite literally, to a sort of Prussian dolls affair, where you're explaining to investigators, well, if you go into a building, well, this is John Cotton for the recording, but here's Dave Fern in the back with a shotgun trying to protect his income. Here's, I don't know, some guy took over corporate communications. Here's some guy just with a family who doesn't want to say anything and is just going to say no comment, love, or whatever it is. And if you look at Pincor's work, there's always one person who can't shut up and just goes for the throat every time. But because that's me, and because we are, again, because of the whole family background, everything about us, we are so terrifying to these people. So at the moment there is what you can think of effectively as Castle McGrath in Birmingham, which is a 5-bedroom home that for me is haunted, but it was haunted by the ghost of one of the most terrifying men in Birmingham. And now I'm in Scotland, the home of my ancestors, the Celts, with Anglo DNA stolen after the war. They're just panicking. But none of this stuff actually matters because nobody cares what these people think. This is the ultimate test. Well, let's be slightly humble. Not the ultimate test, but a pretty good test of any kind of ability for Birmingham City Council to adhere to any aspect of British law. But I forget what Southall was. Well, this could be Southall. But or Deborah Gentieri or whoever this is, some thuggish ignoramus. But if you feminise this model here, that's how the organisation runs. So you're an investigative unit. You go into organisations, you separate the women out individually and interview them police style under caution. Because that's what you need to do in Birmingham at the moment because of the tactics used, because they're just relying on the fumes of institutional legitimacy to claim they're doing what they're doing under the law. But once again, you've got me literally from satellite, above the polis, saying, look, I don't need the laptop to see Birmingham, right? We've got satellites. I know where the properties are. I wouldn't need to have database access to have an idea of what's going on there. But it's just that we can't actually enforce the law in this place because of this. So unless this is sorted out, the department cannot legally function. How please, employer? An employer can't respond because there is no enforcement, right? This thing is dead, right? It's just a ghost. This thing should be powered. So there's a bundle of ash in my late father's home. They should power this thing, but for some reason it isn't. And they're trying to IP block me from space, which doesn't work, because I can't. Yeah? So when Shabana Mahmood is going off to the Five Eyes conference, and the British are saying via satellite, I'm sorry, we don't actually have any consent mechanism in Britain, can the Five Eyes please intervene with the Home Office? That kind of conversation is taking place. So I'm just still flabbergasted. I apologise if I'm rambling away on this one as well. But the position, again, going to another week, you do think it through. And at every point you think, is this really reality? And you realise it is. You realise the situation the city is in. And all I can say to what I have said to my colleagues that we've met before and since is just leave. It's just not salvageable. We can't do anything about this now. People sometimes look at you and give you a sort of startled look. But if I don't care, people can be warned about what's happening within the local authority. Get their families, get their assets out. You're not going to be trapped when the money runs out. So the equity turns out not to be real. Oh dear! Lots of very, very angry people who are told they're going to get a magical substance which doesn't exist. We've tried playing five-side friendlies with the HR department. We would play them with Stellaris or something to explain political theory. But again, their political theory is Hegelian, so it's no, you do as we tell you. We don't have to obey the law, peon. We are in charge, but we'll see. So actually, let's finish the thought off then. So I'm trying to think, is it actually here? We've got Marcusa. It may not be here, but we've got various work with Marcuse, but I'm looking for Baudrillard's book, so Simulacrum and Simulacrum. So the recording yesterday was basically saying that in terms of warfare tactics, it is sort of like Enter the Dragon. So you throw a load of images up. The individual ape in front of you can blast these things apart immediately because they're obvious. But of course, it's Ash conformity experiment every image, so that the monkeys around you are going to react incorrectly. They're part of the primate hierarchy, so they attack you for passing the Ash conformity experiment. Therefore, the strategy goes forward on that basis. You can only therefore counter it by the same mechanism, so at the biological level. Therefore, again, you can think about Birmingham in terms of just an observation from an observation position, and say, okay, it's fairly obvious why this is now a hazard for Britain, and again Europe and the rest of the world, because these people are trying an aggressive takeover as we speak. They're just doing it with the technology. Trying to hide away with laptops, again from scrutiny, which of course they can do because they've got access to Publicity Council corporate resources. So the laptop in my bag is worthless. I'm not going to take it out. It's a decaying all over a piece of trash. That's what they give us to work on. This thing alone is significantly more capable than anything that they would give us. And you've got a pretty good hardware here, full fibre pipe, everything. We need to actually. My energy is now spent, of course, on various other projects. But in terms of Birmingham housing enforcement, you could not be in a better position to actually do it. It is now just getting the link between here and the professional connections. So again, I'll finish the thought there because the brain is just so amazed at the state of Birmingham at the moment, that it's come to this. But yeah, I mean, something needs to change rapidly. So the scary thing again is King Charles. So there is the footage of the people booing his children in the crowd, and that's not particularly pleasant. But come on, he's got to do something about this. So if anyone can find him, again. In the history of Britain, if you can't petition the king, he isn't the king. We're not going to defer to it any further. So if anybody can find him and via letter, civilised means, can we, via some mechanism, via possibly one's member of parliament, see if he can come and talk to a particularly legitimately angry subject who would like. Think of me in Crusader Kings 3. So maybe I would be the peasant revolt guy. In CK3, of course, peasant revolt is totally worthless. You just murder them and they're just an event, because unorganised peasant militias, even with swords, are generally not very effective in the modern world. Organised militaries are unassailable as just a monkey. But you can assail it via their loss of control of the information warfare space. So Birmingham, again, for the recording, has to Sovietize now. They can't do anything else. So you can. It's doing the history of the world just super quickly because of the technology. So you run the English Civil War quickly and cut Charlie's head off. Then you can do Glasnost in Birmingham via force, right? So inspectors come in, but it's not just the money people. You need forensic investigators for the activists, and then you can start to unpick the whole network via that method. So those teams in America ran into all sorts of problems, but because we are the British, we can do that sort of thing really well. It's an island, isn't it? So your counter-revolution strategy is going to involve a Doge or Doge-like team, some kind. You've got a British author who can contribute if she wants, and this sort of thing. But again, people on our side are already thinking about this in terms of potential transfer of power. It's just really trying to work out why, given the current invasion and the king and the pope are aligned. In fact, that's another influence as well, isn't it? The king and the pope are aligned, aren't they? You expect there to be some disagreement, but given our history that they're on the same page currently should give everyone pause for thought. So from Baudrillard to Schopenhauer to cutting off Charles's head.